My name is Yvonne Brooks, and I've worked for McNally for so long that I have actually been around when Nova first started having book launches. Yes, and we know, yes. 3 books. This is her 3rd book with us that you've launched. So we're really excited. And Libba has also been a repeat offender. She has caused some trouble and had a lot of fun times. Whenever you're an interlocutor or the star or the launcher or the launchee, you always somehow bring so much life to any party. And we appreciate that.
Thank you. I brought bail money. Just to
That's so important. I mean, it's not even BEA week, so, you know, that's important. So I'm going to start. I'm going to introduce Nova. Nova Ren Suma is the author of the #1 New York Times best-selling The Walls Around Us. Woo! Yay! And A Room Away from the Wolves, which were both finalists for the Edgar Award. Mysteries abound. She also wrote Imaginary Girls and 17 and Gone, and co-edited the story and craft anthology Foreshadow, Stories to Celebrate the Magic of Reading and Writing. She has an MFA in fiction from Columbia and has taught creative writing at Columbia, the University of Pennsylvania, and Vermont College of Fine Arts. Originally from the Hudson Valley, which the setting is another character in her new book. And she spent most of her adult life in New York City and now lives in Philadelphia. Like, you know, round parents or square brackets, we can decide. Libba Bray is the New York Times best-selling author. Both of you guys. This is just such a star-studded evening. It's great. The author of the Gemma Doyle trilogy, which you all know, A Great and Terrible Beauty, Rebel Angels, The Sweet Far Thing. And won the Michael Prince Award for Going Bovine, Beauty Queens, and LA Times Book Prize finalist as well. And she also wrote the Diviners series. She is originally from Texas, but makes her home in New York City and, wait for it, Paris, France. Wow. Not to be confused with Paris, Texas, but her latest book, Under the Same Stars, was an instant New York Times bestseller, no surprise. And this is very cool. It was a GMA book club pick. So she already hit the screens. Right? Yeah. Can we view that on YouTube, do you think?
Probably.
All right, well, I'm going to let you guys stumble your way around the legs of the tripod, and we will also have a Q&A a little bit later on. So you guys think up some cool questions. If Libba hasn't asked them all, so thanks again.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so first I just have to like wax effusive about Nova. So we first met at Think Coffee a billion years ago. My son was young and he was going to school and I would go and camp out there for the day. And Nova and I met and we were like, hi. And we ended up writing together and it was like so joyful. I loved writing with her. And then we found out that we had lived in the same apartment building on Sullivan Street. I was like, wait a minute. Wait, the one next to the laundromat and the private social club? And she was like, yes. And so, you know, we had that point of contact too. And I just fell in love with her because how could you not fall in love with Nova Ren Suma? Because in addition to being quite literally, and I hope I don't piss any other writers off by saying this, the best writer I know. I am floored by her artistry. She is also an incredible human being. And I love her so much, and I know everybody else does. Everybody knows her as a teacher, and you know, she's a teacher, she's a brilliant writer, she's a brilliant friend, she's a lovely person all the way around. And I am so excited to talk about this book because I think it might be my favorite of all of her books, and I have had the joy of listening to so many of her things and reading so many of her things, and incredible. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation tonight. Also be thinking of your questions. I mean, be in the moment, but also be not in the moment. And if you don't think up questions, I will just tell you that I have a share medley ready to go. So, but I think Nova would very much like to read from the book first.
Okay, first I just want to say thank you everyone for being here. I'm seeing so many familiar faces. I'm just thrilled. So thank you so much. Also, it's so amazing to be back at McNally Jackson launching a new book. I had a bit of a discombobulated moment coming here because I thought it was still in the old location on Prince Street across on the other side of Broadway. But here we are, it is still McNally Jackson, and I'm so happy to be here launching this new novel. And Libba, thank you so much for doing this conversation with me. It was 10 years ago, in 2015.
We were children.
When we launched The Walls Around Us together, and we had an amazing conversation then, and that was one of my most favorite nights as an author and as a person, and so I'm just really happy to be able to do this with you again. I love your writing, and you love that. Okay. So, I wanted to give you a taste of my new book, Wake the Wild Creatures, and I will be doing a little bit of a reading from the iPad because my eyes have gotten a little worse as I age, and I have a very big font. Okay, so what I wanted to, but when I put these on, you're blurs, so I'm just going to take it off for a second. So what I wanted to do is give you a peek at the way this character is in two different time periods in her life. So, Wake the Wild Creatures is a coming-of-age story of survival with a touch of the fantastic about a girl who is captured from an off-grid community of fugitive women hidden away in the Catskill Mountains. And the book takes place in two time periods in her life. So we're with her when she's a child, watching this community, which is called the Neves, be built in an old occupied hotel at the top of a mountain. And we watched, the conflicts that happen, and we watch everything, come together. And then she is taken away when she's 13 years old. And then we have a timeline or a time period that we focus on in present, when she is 3 years later. She is 16, and she wants to get back. And there's a lot of coiled anger inside her, and the voice kind of shifts. So I'm going to give you a little taste of each of those pieces, and then we're going to have our conversation. So, okay. This is the very beginning of the book. Light in the forest, somewhere in the Catskill Mountains. At first, it was beautiful. A hunter's moon hovered in the sky, tremendous and pulsing with light, making the air glow warm all around me. I was spending the night out on my own, near the perimeter marked with subtle symbols and stones, wandering for the joy of it, then running because I could. I lost hold of time passing, or maybe the hours themselves held still. Tree bodies everywhere, knotted oak shoulders and the rough, ridged skin of red spruce and tall firs. The forest I'd known all my life was awake, and so was I. Two quick legs whipping through the bright gold dark, more animal than girl. I reached the clearing with the 7 white pines, their heads thrust up, and stopped to get my breath back. The mist filled my lungs, peppery and also sweet, and the momentum pushed me forward, but I wasn't about to go farther than where I could see from this cliff edge. I wouldn't dare. Giddy, I dropped into a bed of moss, soft and slick in spots, and rolled in it, howled for no reason, felt close to an understanding of some kind, as if an eye inside me was peeling open. It was the first full moon after I turned 13, and I knew that whatever happened in this next stretch of hours would change me forever after. I wasn't wrong. Right then the night turned, the crickets went silent, the owls craned their necks, the moon dimmed. Nearby was something that didn't belong, something our protections were meant to keep out. I got to my feet. I cleared the mud from my brow and searched the surrounding darkness on the high mountain slope we called the Free Woods. If only I could reach the old fire tower and look out from there, I'd be able to see the stabs of light and fields of floating pollution indicating the towns and clusters of houses at the mountain's base. And then I'd know if the commotion was coming from the flatlands below. But from where I stood, I caught only a strange patch of light in the near distance, flickering through the tree cover. The forest cut to a stop down the slope in a sealed strip of land called a road. This light was flashing red at first, then cold and blue, then red again, then blue, an unnatural, sickly blue. This wasn't a lightning storm or a bonfire needing to be tamed. Both events I understood. It wasn't the moon or anything natural. I'd heard of danger like this, had imagined it, used to dream of it in panicked fits in the dark, but had never seen anything like it with my own eyes. Still, I understood without an adult here to translate. The law I'd been taught to fear all my life had come. So that's one part, and then I'm going to skip ahead just a couple pages in the book and give you the opening piece, just a very short piece, from when the character is 3 years later, she's 16 years old. So, homecoming, 3 years later. I'm posing, statue stiff, in a bright borrowed dress at the water's edge, when light flashes in my face and I think out of nowhere of screaming. I think of howling at the murky sky that hides the moon, and grabbing the knife I keep wedged in my boot and going slashing. In a blink, I could crack the glass face of every gawking phone until shiny guts spill everywhere, and then fling myself over the guardrail into the soupy depths of the manufactured reservoir. I want to splash in there with the floating trash and the fish, kick up mud, sink. I want to smear the makeup all over my face, blacken my mouth, redden my eyes, get ugly. I want to ruin everyone's hair, smash windshields, throw rocks, start a fire. I want the courage to do one unforgivable thing, to stop pretending I belong here.
Well, all I can say is, if you can hear that and not immediately buy this book, I may offer the prayer of my people. Bless your heart. I mean, it's extraordinary. There's so much I want to talk about tonight, but one of the things that I want to talk about was right there in those two passages, and it's about craft. I couldn't help but notice that whenever you would talk about life in the Neves, the language was sensual and lush, and it reflected this kind of wild overgrowth and this freedom. And whenever you would write about life in the lands beyond, the flatlands, it was sharp. I mean, even there, it's like the knife and the wanting to smear things and crash things and splinter and glitter and sequins. Everything is hard, and the language is sort of staccato. And I was like, how does she do this? She's a witch. What is that process? What was that process like for you in trying to distinguish these two very different lives?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there are parts of the novel that are set in the outside world that is for this narrator Talia is alien to her, or she feels like an alien in that place. And there's a lot of anger inside her at being taken away from everything she loved and knew. And there's a lot of just disdain, I think, and just like not understanding why people make why do they live these lives? So I had to kind of I had to put myself into the different shoes of what version of Talia I was writing at that point. And the parts in the Neves, so the parts in the mountains at this occupied hotel, brought me back to my childhood. And, you know, I thought of, you know, being a wild little girl running through the woods and, you know, just the freedom of that moment, the land that I remember from my memories. And I think in embodying that in the writing, when I was thinking about it, the language kind of shifted because I'm you know, bringing back good memories and you know, happy things and things that feel magical. And then when I was thinking about the real world and I was writing those sections, it's very, you know, divorced and separated from that. And there's a longing for it, but there's also just, you know, feeling like, you know, the modern world and technology and, you know, pollution, but also the things that Talia is learned to live against in this, you know, group of women who were hidden away in the mountains, which was, you know, they're, you know, against misogyny and like, you know, the way, you know, the way the universe, the society treats women and people, and the way people aren't treated equally. And there's just so much that is in contrast to what Talia grew up living, that in writing that, when I was thinking about the craft, I thought about her emotions, her separation, her anger, and I was feeling that in I think the sharpness of the words when I was writing. So, but in terms of like craft-wise, because it's two different time periods, I had to write and embed myself in one for a while, and then I had to go and embed myself in the other. Like I couldn't switch back and forth equally, and that's why in the book you'll be immersed in a section for a little while, and then you'll switch to the other section, and it's not alternating chapters. It felt too, you know, like too much of yeah. Anyway, I couldn't do back and forth like that, and I had to really be deep in it.
So that brings up another question, which is this novel goes in and out of time. And one of the things that I was struck by, and you know, I often talk about writing in terms of music, and every single time when I was like, you know, I would get to something and I'd be like, oh, she switched the music, like the tempo or something, and it felt so right. And I was wondering, like, you know, hearing you talk about how you had to be immersed in these two different things, how did you decide structurally, like, okay, we've been down here, now we need to be here?
You know, with this novel, first of all, I should make it clear, this book took quite a long time to write. So I feel like there are a number of you who were, you know, in classes with me or knew me at a time when I was working on this book, and you're like, wow, it's only now coming out. You know, I have been working on this book for a number of years, and in the time of working on it, the structure drastically changed. So there was a point when I just saw it in a different way. I saw basically the order of the events, the way the book is knitted together in a different way. And then I had kind of like a revelation or a realization that it would be better tension-wise if I kind of switched the structure in terms of she's, you know, captured, and then we're learning about what was taken from her, instead of not understanding that, we have to go back in time. And so having to revamp that whole thing, I think it really shifted and revealed a lot in my writing. It allowed me to find new things, but it also was one of those choices where, you know, you come upon something that you're like, this could make my book better. This is going to be a lot of work. Do I want to do this to myself? And sometimes we make the decision, I don't know, it's good enough as it is. But there was something about this where I'm like, I knew this was going to be really a lot. I knew this was going to take a lot out of me. But I really believed that it was what the book needed, because we needed to understand what was being stolen from this girl, what was being taken from this girl, and why she wanted to get back. And we needed to have that her being propelled to get back, to feel what was missing, and then to want her to get back to it. So,
at what point during the process did you make that discovery where you're like, oh, balls?
I wish I could remember what draft it was. Like, it was like, it was a revision. So was it a big second draft maybe, or what's the first draft took a long time? Was it the third draft? I don't remember, but it was far along in the process. It was not how I originally envisioned the book. Yeah, and isn't that the thing?
That's
It's like,
always the
you know,
way.
it comes on you, and then you have to decide, am I up for this challenge? You know? So, yeah, I know.
Ugh. I don't know. It's so inconvenient, this writing thing. I also want to ask you, because there are quite a few things in there about, I mean, the Catskills is clearly a character, and I know how much it's embedded in your bones, you know, your childhood. But there are things about the hotel and about, but also about prison life. There are quite a few things in there where I was like, how did she know that? So what kind of research did you do?
Yeah. So, this book, you know, it took a number of years, and there was a lot of things that went into finding all the pieces that went into creating the world of the Needs, which was based on, you know, a lot of the old hotels in the Catskill Mountains that have been closed down, known as the Borscht Belt. So, you know, doing some thinking about that, but then also in terms of, you know, stuff with the prison system. Talia's mother, who is the founder of this community in the mountains, is put away in prison for murder, and so we have scenes where Talia is visiting her in the prison, and so there was like a number of things of like, this is an avenue of research that I must go down. But what I want to mention now, especially tonight, is that we have there's a lot of research about the magical possibilities of this world in the mountains. So I have said that there's this separatist community, you know, hidden away in the mountains. What I haven't told you is that it is protected, or at least my narrator believes so, by a mist that surrounds the mountaintop, and only those who are meant to find this place can find it, and those who cannot find it see nothing, right? They can't make their way up there. And there were a lot of questions I had about, you know, what have other magical stories done about worlds that are hidden in this way? That, you know, what are the rules of magic? What might like make sense? And so when I was writing this book, I actually had a wonderful opportunity. So I was teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, and I had an opportunity to be a part of the Bassini apprenticeship program, where a faculty person gets to have an apprentice, a student at Penn, who works with them and helps them in whatever project that they want to do. So my project was a bunch of research, and it wasn't just for this novel, it's for other novels too. But I just want to say that we have the person who helped me so much with many different elements. So Leah Baxter, thank you so much. Leah was my apprentice when I was working on trying to figure out like those questions of magic, and trying to figure out how to build this world in a believable way and see what all possibilities there were. And Leah opened up all these avenues of wonder for me. And I feel like through that semester that we had together, I found all these new questions and all these new possibilities. So I'm really excited that Leah's here tonight. Yay. So that's the research. And then the other piece of the research is, I mentioned these Borscht Belt hotels. So when I was, you know, young, I grew up in the Catskills. I had an awareness of these hotels that had been closed down. You know, there was a hotel outside of Woodstock where I grew up called the Overlook Mountain House that was burned down, and there's like a, you know, just like a husk of walls that we would hike up to. So I always had this fascination, and not in what the hotels had been when they were alive, like you might see in Dirty Dancing, but instead the idea of these rotting old like little palaces in the forest, and like what became of them. You know, what has happened? What might become of them? What if people made new use of them? What if people found them and started something different there, right? And so that's where the Needs came from. And there was a photo that I found of a hotel called the Grand Hotel, which was it was built by a railroad company. So they built a railroad line leading all the way up to the top of the mountain. They put this palace of a hotel up at the top. The picture that I found shows this beautiful hotel surrounded just by a fur of trees, just nothing else, right? And the hotel was built up there and then closed down in the 1960s when the train line closed. So they built a train just to reach the hotel. It went up, it went down, the train had no other purpose. They closed the train line, the hotel got closed down. So I found that to be really inspiring and was thinking of like what I might make of with that hotel. But so in my mind, it remained. The ruins remained up there, and something. These women in my story have come and reimagined a hotel like that. Mine is an invented version, but in reality, apparently, I found this out recently that I guess when they closed the hotel, they carted it all back down the mountain. So if you go up to the top of the mountaintop where it used to be, it's not there anymore. And that feels like it's almost like you, as writers, right? We find these little pieces of things and we make something into it. So for me, I imagine a hotel like that did remain, and people have made a new existence there, and it wasn't removed. It has this new magical life, So little research out of this.
That's fascinating to me, and as well as thinking about the vagaries of magic. What does magic mean to you? And do you think that some places hold magic?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. I said this last night so I have a series of book events because I'm on book tour right now, and I'm like, what did I say at each event? But last night, I was saying in terms of magic, I was feeling really nervous before the event, and I was leaving my hotel room, and I looked up, and there was this painting of a woman, and she was kind of like smiling, but not creepily. Like, I
love that you have to justify that.
I know,
not creepily.
Yeah, but not creepily. She was smiling at me, and I felt like she was communicating, "You're going to do great. It's going to be wonderful." Like, she was like, "I'm proud of you," and like I just felt this moment from her, and I felt almost like this magical feeling in Boston in this hotel room that it would be okay, and it was okay. It was great. But that's the kind of thing. It's like I feel like wherever I go, magic exists. And in terms of writing, I was the kind of child that absolutely believed in that stuff, in ghosts, in things that people say are impossible or unreal, and that's why most worlds that I write, are grounded in reality, and then there's some kind of twist or other possibility or something other, because it feels like that to me. It felt like that when I was young, and I admit, even as a grown adult, in a hotel room in Boston, it feels like that sometimes too.
I remember, so Nova and I had this discussion at one point that we wanted to do a tour of haunted hotels,
yes.
And we would trade information, and then of course we realized that neither one of us drove. So we were going to have to hire a ghost to drive us, a ghost driver. But yeah, we would always be like, this hotel, it's haunted. This one, what about this one? I have a quote, and I'm going to look it up just because I want to get it absolutely right, because it just knocked me out when I read it. I wrote it down here. So on page 203, if you're curious, it says, there's a quote, "Once a myth is formed, it takes over the truth." And that really stuck with me, perhaps because of where we are.
Yes.
And I wondered if maybe you'd like to talk about that in terms of the society that's built, but also because I know. So Nova and I were in a workshop during COVID that met on Sundays over Zoom. And we were both working on our books at the same time. And so I got to hear parts of this. And P.S., if you've ever been if you want to feel humble, be in a workshop with Nova, because we would write in the moment and then read what we just written.
That's how I felt about her.
Sure, Jan. So then, the rest of us would be like, yeah, I got 2 9s. And then Nova would be like, well, I have all of these cards, I don't know what they mean. I'm like, that's a royal flush. We'd all just be like, oh my God, okay, I'm just gonna take my football and go home. But I got to hear parts of this. But I was thinking about myth and truth, this community that's formed, the secrets that are kept among these women and in this family and from Talia, and then also about where we are now, where we were then. I don't know, there's some question in there about myth and how it becomes truth. And I mean, obviously you wrote that line because it meant something to you, and so.
You know, I think I mean, as a fiction writer, it's almost like we are doing that every day in a weird way. Like, I feel there's something about the writing of a novel that becomes so real and true for me that I almost remember it as if it actually happened, and it's not, and it overtakes the truth. So if you write something that is about your life, for example, which I have done, and then kind of like shift it and change it and fictionalize it, then that myth of what what it was is then more real to me and true than the reality, and I remember the fiction that I wrote. So I feel like in writing this kind of book and thinking about what is truth, it's like we're like searching for finding that through our fiction, but we're also in a way like remaking it through our stories. So I don't know, very interesting question, and like thinking about within the world of the needs and the myths and the stories that they tell each other about what these women did in the past, what led them to climb this mountain and be a part of this community, and then the power of that, the power to bring people together, to build a community from that. All of that is just so interesting to me, and I feel that as a writer, and then I feel that within what I want to be writing about.
It's a great answer. And would you wish for a community like the Neves where women could be wild creatures?
It's funny. I was at another like a panel or something, and somebody asked me. They said, "You're writing about the natural world and the woods. You must be like a real nature person." And I was just like, I hate to break it to you, but like I've lived in cities ever since I could escape, and I don't know. Like there's something about me that's I think what it is that sometimes in writing you are able to transport yourself into other lives and other possibilities and other versions of yourself and what ifs. Maybe I am not the kind of person who would be able to live in a community like this. There's no running water, there's no electricity, you know what I'm saying? But like, I imagine it's like I'm able to live that life through the story. So I don't know if I would be able to make the sacrifices and the choices that I admire in the women of this community. But I think I needed to kind of challenge myself and exist in that way through writing it.
It's funny that you say that, because I always joke and say that, like, first of all, I won't even get on a roller coaster. It's just like, no, that's a little death trap. And, and as I was reading this, I was like, both in awe of these women and also thinking, but could I just take a shower? There's like dial soap because it's antibacterial. It looks like it needs it. And so, and I always jokingly say that writing is my only extreme sport, and I feel that is exactly what you just said. But you brought up something which made me think about the fact that this is also a mother-daughter story.
Yeah.
Very much so. And Paula is not perhaps what we might think of as a warm, cuddly, nurturing type. She is preparing her daughter for the life she needs to live. And I wondered if you'd talk about that.
So Talia was carried on her mother's back when she was just a baby up the mountain to this community. And so this is all she's ever known. Her mother was, running from the law. She was a fugitive. She's a hardened woman. She's coiled inside, and she has expectations for her daughter to be strong, to speak up, to be like her. And Talia is, like, I think in ways a little bit more like me, like a little timid in times, and not able to speak up in the way that her mother would want her to. And so the contrast and the challenge between them of she idolizes her mother. She, thinks her, everything that her mother has chosen is this beautiful, amazing thing that she wants to be a part of, and yet she feels like she can never live up to what her mother wants of for her and of her. And I think that is a very interesting thing to write about. In my own experience, my personal experience, I have a very loving mother. I had a very different, relationship. My mom is here. but I would say that, I said that last night and you weren't here. It's just writing about a character who has that kind of, conflicted relationship with her mother and wasn't treated the way I was treated. It's another way of transporting yourself into another kind of experience and seeing what that would be like and really embodying it. Yeah, so it was an interesting thing to write, but I feel like this mother character needed to be like that in order to live up to the myth of who she was in the book,
Yeah, again, with the myth making, and there's some interesting stuff in there about how Pola navigates her own sort of smokescreen, if we will say, and but also I was conscious of the fact, because I know your mother and I know how she's very kind, and I was like, oh yeah, right, my mother, that's not anything like Arlene. There were just a few more questions, and then be thinking of those questions that you want to ask, because I'm just saying, I know all the words to Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. I know. Well, I've spoken about this a little bit, and I'm not bringing it up just because I gave it to you. But you said that this was different because this book was inspired by, in a sense, a writing prompt, a visual writing prompt. And that's not usually the way things go.
Right.
So,
and I want to ask you about this also. So, this was the first time that I wrote a book that had a very specific, I can look at it and I can be like, this was the thing that inspired the book. And it is thanks to the person who was sitting here on the stage. And I don't even think you realized at the time what you were doing to me. But, so Libba gave me a birthday present years ago. This was years ago. And it was this, I don't have it with me to show you, so I'm going to describe it. It was an art print, black and white pen and ink drawing with a little bit of green on the cover, on the cover. And it's a drawing of two girls, and they have long hair and long dresses, long skirt like this, and they're kind of huddled up together next to each other. They look almost identical, like they could be sisters. And behind them is a big picture window, and through it you can see a peak of the forest and a deer with antlers looking on, right? And the title of this art print is called Daughters of the Forest. It's by an artist named Megan Ekman. And Libba gave me this picture, and I saw it, and I thought, oh, that's beautiful. And how interesting. Of course, the style was something I liked. So, and then I looked closer at the picture, and I saw something that I had missed. So under the girls' skirts, you can see their feet, and they don't have human feet. They have deer hooves. And that was the opening for me. That was the prompt for me. I thought, oh, what was so wonderful for me is that it was a surprise and I didn't notice it at first. It was almost like it was hidden, and then the fairy tale or the fantasy or the magic appeared.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm going to take my boots off.
Cloven.
So yeah, there was something about that was a writing prompt for me. I don't even know, I don't think you meant to gift me a writing prompt, but something in that led me to originally the idea had two sisters. I then, through the structural changes and thinking about it, it became one girl, Talia, and that's why there's the Talia, of the mountain, which is a child, and the Talia outside, which is a teenager. So it's these two girls split into, or converged into one. And the Daughters of the Forest. She's very much a daughter of the forest. So you gave me this this prompt, and it sat with me for quite a long time. It came out in different ways. I started writing little bits of it when I was teaching a workshop at the Jurassic Resident Artist Program on a mountain in California. And the first line that I ever wrote was written, "We have taken the mountain, And so that came from that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. You gave me this picture. Did you have any idea that this was a story in the making? Like, why did you think to give this to me? It was so perfect.
I got it at Witch House in Salem.
Of course.
Yes.
That's even more perfect. I
And
didn't know
I
that.
just saw it and I was like, Nova. I was just like, that is so Nova. And I just was like, no, it has to live with you. And that was it. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a whole book.
Well,
That's
go
pretty
past
amazing.
me.
That's pretty amazing. And I
Thank you,
love,
Witch House.
I love that something like that can lead you into the pursuit of writing a whole novel that like overtakes your life for years. But just the fact that you never know where inspiration might come from, and you never know what like the form of it. I think for me it was that moment of surprise of noticing beauty and thinking of something magical and strange. And just being open to that, just seeing when that might happen, and running with it. Just like having a prompt that leads you somewhere. We did prompt writing workshops together, as Libba was saying, and there's something about when you're coming, you might be working on a project, or you might have nothing in your head at all, and someone else offers you an entry point into writing, and it just takes the pressure off. You can just do anything with it. And I think when I was so, like in my head and editing myself too much and not being sure what to do, it's just like this gift of just like this breath of fresh air, and it fills you up, and then suddenly you have something new. So that's what that picture felt like, and that's what, that kind of writing feels like. And you can find prompts like that at any moment. You never know. You never know. You might spend many years writing a book and suddenly you a picture.
Okay, I want to ask you two more questions before we open it up to people who I know have many questions for you. I can feel it. So, one of the questions I want to ask you is, if there's anything you wanted someone to take away from this book, what is it?
When I was doing like the deepest work in this novel, and I was trying to figure it out, it was during the pandemic. And it was at that point that I was just, I feel like a lot of us, I was just feeling just so incredibly pessimistic. There was just like a lot of negativity surrounding me. And it was almost like the writing of this book helped me through my pessimism and helped me see just the possibilities of what could come from making different choices in life in terms of creating community. So I feel like that's what I feel like is part of this book. This book is about building a community, and it's also about rebuilding when things have gotten broken and feel like there's nothing left, but it's worth saving. And I see that in the heart of the book, and I just hope that other people can find that too when they read it.
That heart is so palpable, and I got to the end of the book. Let me just say, I'm famously not a crier. I wish I were, but I'm like Spock. I'm just like, wow, that's really sad. Two tears. And I did. I teared up. I was like, I had a lump in my throat, and I was like, this is so beautiful. And that last line, I was like, yeah, she got me. It's really beautiful. It comes through. And then, of course, I have to ask you, what are you working on now?
So I am just beginning a new YA novel. My proposal got a green light last week. It's interesting. I was saying that this book, originally the picture had two sisters, and I was writing about sisters, and then it became something else. The new book is about sisters. They are staying, and there are 3 sisters, and that's really all I can say at this moment. And I would just say it's surreal, and I'm really, I'm interested in the strangeness and the surrealness.
Really? I've never thought that from you.
So I'm just playing with that, and then I'm also, working on other things that take me beyond writing YA. I feel like, I've reached a point in my life where there's like other avenues, other things I want to say, other, ways of telling a story with, perhaps some more distance, looking at, childhood or something like that. So there are other things in the works as well. But this book was so long in coming that I feel like I almost needed to just like take a breath and just be like, I did this. There was a whole point where I'm like, I don't know if this is ever going to come out. And it came out yesterday. Like, other things will come, but I feel like I also want to just like be in this and be like, this happened, I did it. Yeah, it took many years and I did it.
Well, it is an accomplishment, my love. It is gorgeous, and you're all in for a treat. And I think that we should hear some questions from the audience. Yes.
I feel like I remember you saying maybe when you were working on A Room Full of Wolves, like just because you've written one book doesn't mean that you know how to write the next one.
Oh.
And you've already spoken a little bit about how you had to go really deep into each voice as you were working. And I'm curious about like the same push-pull of with a book that is textured between different voices, that has a different structure than you thought it would when you started. Like, what was your process like with separating writer brain and editor brain?
Oh, yeah, it was. I mean, this was really, really hard to get through, and I think I was just criticizing myself so much. I had too much of the like mean editor brain on, you know, when I was doing it, which, you know, a lot of times we can't help, and part of what helps me get out of that is doing writing prompt work and doing things like that. But, you know, I remember when I was writing A Room Away from the Wolves, which was my novel that came out before this in 2018, so it's a little while ago, and I had such a hard time articulating and getting to the end of that, and I felt like I've learned from this. Like I survived this. I learned from this. I learned like why you know what got me in trouble, and I won't do it again. And so I went into this like, okay, you know, like I'm in it. I'm gonna do it. And then this one had all new struggles and all new things that I was not expecting, and all of the lessons that I learned last time were, you know, well and good, but like didn't help me in this. So yeah, it was difficult. There were whole new difficulties in this book, and I think in terms of like being in the writing brain, one thing that really helped me was there was a point when I was at a really, really low point with writing this book, and I really thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate it the way I wanted to get to, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, and I really doubted myself. And I just, you know, you have those fantasies of like giving up and being like, I'm gonna walk away, I'm not gonna do it. And I told myself, I'm gonna try something. And so I told myself, I'm going to envision the dream of the novel that I want to write. Like, in my mind, I have written the most amazing possible version of what this idea could be. It exists, I can see it, and I kind of like made myself see it. And then I leapt forward and I wrote the very last like passage of what that book would be. Not the book that I was writing, because the draft that I had was not that at all. It was a mess. But the version of the dream novel, the version of my, like, you know, what I could attain, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote the very end of that book, and then it's like 3 paragraphs, and I printed it out. I pinned it to my wall so I could see it from my desk. And I sometimes, when I was having a really hard time with the over editing, I would read it aloud to myself in my room, and I would just like return to it, and I'd read it, and I'd just like, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go to it and I'd read it, and I'd be like, you can get there, you can write the book that is worthy of that. And the last few paragraphs of this book are pretty much the paragraphs that I had on the wall for all that time, and it was quite a long time. So that, I feel like that kind of thing of like visualizing what I wanted it to be was something that helped me get out of the editor brain and be in like the creating writer, you know, version of myself that would be able to finish this book. And then I was able to. So that's a little trick, I suppose. Wow. So thank you for that question.
That's a better answer than I even thought.
I know, I'm like, I was also thinking, it really helps if those last 3 paragraphs are written by Nova Ren Suma.
Just
those
write
to my wall.
perfect 3 ending paragraphs and work backwards from there.
Well, that's, my question is actually about process also I'm thinking when you guys, when you're talking about all the edits and all the people in here that have, read different edits and everything over the years, do you feel that your bigger stumbling blocks are word stumbling blocks, or structural? Because, obviously both are issues, and, many more issues too, but I'm just saying, when you feel like you hit a wall, is it usually a wall made of tiny pieces or a wall made of big chunks?
I am the kind of writer who just loves beautiful sentences,
Yeah.
reading them, trying to write them. If I could write a book of just pretty sentences and it didn't have to have a plot, I would be so happy.
Yes.
I would just be
Yes.
like, I need the help of an editor, and the editor who worked on this book is here. So Elise, thank you so much for getting me. My block is the bigger parts, is the structure, is the plot, is the trying to take all the pretty things that I am attached to and make them have drive and forward motion and shape, and we worked a lot on that, and I feel like that that very much is something that I need as a writer.
Yeah.
And if we don't have an editor who can help you find that, an outside voice, someone
Right.
that you trust, someone that wants your best interest, that believes in you, that knows you can reach it,
Right.
and wants to help you reach it. So yeah, for me, truly, if it were possible to just publish a 300-page novel with just moments.
I think
I would buy another Ren Suma
but
moments.
yeah, and for all
You
the
would just read the
moments, we
most
could
beautiful
that.
sentences you've ever read, because it's true.
Well, and for all the beautiful sentences that you've written, and this book is so gorgeous.
Yes.
It's very interesting how you're able to then step back and just a sentence as utilitarian and helpful, an auxiliary sentence, where Lake says, "You're not lying," where it's just so, you've just laid it out flat after getting there in this, all this beautiful writing, and then yet you can then somehow step back and just, it's just a chink of light, and then go back into the forest again. It's really beautiful.
Well, I think part of if you're the kind of writer who just really gets lost in your own sentences,
Yeah.
having the challenge of needing to, elevate your plot, elevate your tension, make things bigger, I think it really brings out the best in you.
Yeah.
This is, I feel like, sure, it would be, my Moments book would be nice, but I feel like there's something that, in knowing that the plot didn't come easy, rising to that really makes, I feel like it brings out more in your writing. I felt like I found pieces like that when I was trying for that. So it doesn't come naturally to me. I need a push sometimes. I need a big push, but then I feel like I'm better for it. And then when I work with writers, I tend to push in that direction also.
Right.
So it's like you can see it in other people, but you can't see it in yourself.
Sure, of course.
But I think you're also always cognizant of what's at stake for your characters. The emotional terrain is always there, and that's propulsive.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I would love for you to speak some more to the mother-daughter element of the story. I have heard the craft advice that for YA, you should get the grown-ups out of the way as much as possible. And I've read mother-daughter stories for children. I've read mother-daughter stories for adults, but I don't think I've ever read a YA story. And so I would love for you to speak some more about why you chose to write a mother-daughter story for this age group, and how the age group impacted the way that you told the story.
Yeah, I know. Don't we always hear that? Get the parent. We don't want the parents, But I think also it's that you want your YA characters, your teenage characters in a YA book to have agency, right? And so if the adult is there taking the agency away from them, that takes away, any investment in the story. It makes things matter less. So I understand that advice, and I understand why. And also, when you're reading YA, you want to read about the people in that moment. You don't want to read about grown-ups. I mean, I certainly often didn't want to write about grown-ups and wanted to write about teenagers. But I think in terms of like thinking about writing a mother-daughter story, I often, I want to write about female relationships a lot of times, female friendships, and I feel like also that mother-daughter tension, but also the idea of a mother who is someone that you can't live up to, that you're trying to, you know, find your way to, you know, make her see you, make her see you for who you are, is such an important thing that so many teenagers go through. You know, teenagers of all genders, you know, dealing with their mothers. And so I think there are a number of YA stories, mother-daughter stories, and I'm trying to like think through that. But you know, for me, it's just something that I find to be a really interesting, dramatic possibilities. But also, it's about coming of age. You know, YA is about coming of age, and coming of age in connection to our parents and apart from our parents. And so much of Talia's coming of age in Wake the Wild Creatures is in reflection and in contrast to her mother. Who she is, you know, is necessary to note and understand her mother, but who she is has to be someone beyond that. She has to make choices beyond that are her own at the end of this. And I feel like in writing that, that's what I was leading to, and that's what I was hoping to find. Thank you for that great question.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's been really inspiring, first of all. My question is sort of similar to some of the ones already, but I was wondering, like, how has your vision for who this book is for changed throughout writing to ensure through all the different iterations? There's been a lot.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, like, you know, when you think about audience, it's often when I'm like deep into writing a book where I'm only thinking, like, I'm so embedded in the book that I'm not thinking necessarily about who is going to be reading it. I'm not thinking about my audience, and that can be to my detriment. So there was a point in this book where I was just so embedded in the childhood and in the memories and all this stuff, and I feel like the book was veering a little bit away from its intended audience, which was a YA teenage audience. And so, you know, through the revising and through finding the story, what the story was meant to be, the audience emerged all the more. And so I really think now I see like this, you know, who this young person who might find this book, or it doesn't even have to be a young person, a person who wants to consider living in a different way, you know, like, you know, challenging themselves to have a different kind of life, perhaps. Coming of age can come at any age, right? But it helped me, you know, when I kind of lost my way with the book. I think part of it was that I wasn't thinking as much of the audience. And then when I was thinking more of the audience, the book kind of really meshed together and like crystallized and everything came. So maybe that's a lesson in keeping your audience in mind, or maybe it's a lesson in through the writing, you're seeing who this book is mostly meant for. There's also a dedication at the beginning where I talk about, you know, just those who feel like they don't belong. That this book is for, you know, the outcasts and people who feel like they don't belong. I certainly was that kid when I was young, you know, and I certainly was that teenage girl, and I feel like a lot of us were teenagers like that, but also human adults in the world. And I think anyone can connect with the book through that. So I feel like that ultimately would be my audience. Like, if that speaks to you, maybe this book is for you.
Well, it makes sense here you talk about having written so much of it during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and about community. Because I do think that one of the things that comes up is, what is home?
Mm-hmm.
How do we define home? And the longing for home and belonging and community. And I think that's universal, whether you are 4, 14, 45.
Yeah.
I do think, and I think that is so there in this book. Great question. There was somebody else with a question? Yes. Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
So Nova, my question is a little bit more personal. So you have a wonderful, fierce, fiery feminism through your work that I really love, but as a person, you're also very sensitive. And how would you say you balance those things in, not just as an artist, but as a person in a world that isn't necessarily receptive to us sensitive people.
Yeah, I feel like I am, I haven't found out for sure, but I feel like I'm one of those, I'm a highly sensitive person who is just very upset and bothered and takes everything in. And that can be really hard, first of all, as a writer. I mean, that is just like an extremely difficult thing to be when you're putting your hopes and dreams and your ideas out on the page, and working in publishing, working with readers, reviewers. Like, it's just incredibly difficult. As an author, I kind of live in a little glass bubble. I don't read reviews, and I don't know if that when reviews are sent to me, I send them to my husband, and he will tell me if there's something good I need to see. I can't read them. I can't even read the good ones. I'll read if it's on, like there's a pull quote on my website. I have read that because that's on my website. So there's something that I have to kind of shield myself from, or else none of the writing would get done. None of this would happen. So much of that I feel like I'm kind of navigating all the time and trying to find a way to like lift myself up and keep myself intact. And so over the years in all these books, I've found like the ways that I can protect myself, so I can still tell stories like this. And then in terms of like the characters, sometimes who are fierce or maybe violent or doing very active things, it's almost like I'm living through my characters, and sometimes some of my emotions, some of my anger, it's just a way to get that out in a way that feels safer, I think, for someone like me. And I feel like a lot of writers probably connect to that too. So yeah.
It was a great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And also, may I just say
Yes.
that we are in an independent bookstore. Speaking of community,
Yes.
and please support your independent bookstore by buying books. So, may I just say?
Well, and that dovetails nicely with what I was going to say, was that we'll be signing books to us at the table, and Libba also will be signing, if your signing hand is okay. Okay, and yes, I know, it's actually time to keep up, especially after you've been on GMA. On prime time television. And also I want to remind everyone to use their $5 certificates tonight. They set it up so that they're good for tonight. And usually we make you pay for the book and then come back and then have them signed, but because of the elevator, we are going to do something very novel. We're going to be on the trust system. So you can have your books signed down here and then go pay for them upstairs on your way out. And some of you already prepaid and ordered them, and you already have those books and everything. So again, we're all working together on the same team here. But remember to use your certificates. Put it toward a pen or pencil, a book, 5 books, and if you need any gifts for the future, you can get them signed while the stars are here. Yeah, so thank you both so much. That was wonderful.